Hey everyone, Circuit 6 here with the X-55 Rhino HOTAS system from Saitek. HOTAS being the hands-on throttle and stick. We'll go over what makes this stick great, as well as some of the problems that I found during testing, and finally we'll take it for a spin through Elite Dangerous. Inside the box you won't find any software, but you will find a quick start guide along with instructions on how to download the drivers and software from the website. Outside of that, you'll find the joystick detached from its base, a tube of different length springs, as well as the throttle system. One of the first things that you'll notice about this joystick base is that the weight of it is actually rather light considering the size. There are also no buttons, switches, or lights on the base whatsoever. One of the major selling points of this system is to be able to change out the springs in the base of the joystick. You can see fresh out of the box, this one came equipped with a green spring. The enclosed tube of springs comes with 3 other types, a red, a blue, and a yellow, each providing various levels of tension. The joystick, just like the base, is manufactured out of plastic. However, it has no shortage of buttons or hat switches, including a backlit POV hat and a pinky trigger on the front of the unit. The joystick mounts easily to the base with little effort and no tools required. I was nervous to tighten it down too much because the threads are made out of plastic and the last thing I wanted to do was strip them. The base of the throttle unit is similar to that of the joystick unit, only in the fact that it's made of plastic. Outside of that, it's loaded with switches and buttons. The switches themselves are momentary switches and not toggle switches. What this means is when you press them into position and release them, they'll go back to center automatically. The throttle boasts 2 additional hats and can control up to 6 axes. The hats on the side of the throttle don't have much resistance and can be triggered easily with just a brush of the finger. The front of the throttle has 2 push buttons and 1 rocker switch. Keeping in line with the springs on the joystick, you can also adjust the tension on the throttle with the rotary on the side of the base. The dual throttle design locks together to allow you to control a single engine aircraft, or you can use the slider lock on the side of the throttle to disengage the 2 and control the throttle of multiple engines. Finally, the mode selector switch on the bottom allows you to choose between 3 different profiles. Each profile can be customized for different types of aircraft or styles of play. Now before we go too much further, I want to talk about one thing in particular. A lot of people have been complaining that for a $200 price tag, they were expecting the build quality of this joystick to be a bit better. However, in my opinion, for $200 you get a ton of functionality and features. That's why perhaps that the build quality of this is not up to par with what maybe people would expect. For an all metal build, you can look at other joysticks and you can see that the price tag difference between those and the X-55 is about $300. Keeping that in mind though, in no way does this feel cheap. It does feel like it's a relatively solid build, and I don't feel like it's going to break on me if I happen to, get a little bit rough with it. Now the one major complaint I do have with this joystick is the amount of pressure it takes to actually break the joystick away from center. This is partly due to its design, I think, with the interchangeable springs. You can see at the bottom of the spring there's a small cup that fits into a recess. The pressure that the spring puts down on that cup makes it very difficult to break it out of that recess initially. Just to make sure that I wasn't imagining things, I tried a test multiple times in all different directions to make sure that the resistance I was feeling wasn't just necessarily due to the way I was using it, or even perhaps because of the spring I was using. So I repeated the test multiple times with different springs, and I'll show you the results, and I'll fast forward through each of the springs that I used. So this initial test was done with the blue spring, and I am now swapping it out for the red, and here are the results. Now the red spring offers the least resistance of all of the springs. You'll notice that once I get it back assembled that it doesn't even quite make contact. There's quite a bit of free play. But as you notice, as I rock it up and down, it seems to be breaking away okay. But when I go left and right, you can see that it takes a little bit more effort and it almost snaps out of center. I then repeated this process with every spring going up in tension. What I found is that every single one of them behaved practically identical. The only exception that I did find is that rotating the spring did happen to change kind of the spot of resistance that it would break away. Now, this isn't necessarily a deal breaker, but I believe the addition of maybe some additional grease or something in the base there may help it break away a little bit easier. Overall, though, this is probably the biggest gripe I have with this joystick so far. So with that out of the way, I'll explain a little bit on how to change out the springs, which is actually relatively simple. All you have to do is remove the joystick from the base, and then remove this plastic collar by popping it up. That plastic collar holds in the threaded ring that basically keeps the pressure down on the spring. If you take that off as well, it comes off in two pieces. You can remove the spring, put the new one on, and then repeat the process in the reverse order. It's actually very simple to do. Alright, so now we're going to take a look at this in Elite Dangerous. And first I'll show you an external view, what it looks like. As you can tell, the joystick is actually quite large. My hand is actually quite big, and I have a difficult time reaching some of the switches on the top of the joystick. Now this was modeled after, I believe, the F-18, and it's pretty close to an exact replica. So even though it seems big, this is actually pretty typical to what they use. Also, as a side note, Elite Dangerous comes with a preset for the X-55. This is so that you don't have to go through and configure all the buttons once you get the joystick in. It makes it much easier just to jump in the game and get going. Saitek also offers a bunch of different profiles that you can download from their website for the different games that are available, and they claim it works with the majority of other flight simulator games, which I've yet to test, but I am anxious to try it out on FSX, X-Plane, as well as DCS, Digital Combat Simulator. Really curious to see how well it's going to perform, you know, something like the A-10 or the F-15. When it comes to X-Plane 10, possibly even 9, I know Saitek offers a bunch of different profiles that you can grab for the different aircraft that are available. So I'm having a little bit of trouble getting out of the station. Of course, I picked the largest ship that there is, the Anaconda. So it takes me a little while to get out, and I really haven't had much time to play around with the joystick, so I'm going to use that as my excuse. So here I'm just kind of getting a feel for the joystick. I did use the default settings within Elite Dangerous, so I'm kind of learning the controls as I go here. But so far everything feels very fluid. I did go with the blue spring. Just thought it was a good balance between how much pressure it actually took to break away from the center, and then how much resistance throughout the flow of the motions. Now the joystick here, you can see the pitch, the yaw, and the rotation can all be controlled just from the joystick. It does twist on the center axis, so you can set that up for your yaw if you'd like. I know some people actually in space sims like to set it up for the rotation. I've tried it both ways, and you know, it's really a thing of preference. So I'll just play this for about a minute or so here, and then we'll switch over to the throttle side. Alright, real quick before we switch over to gameplay, give you a close-up of the backlighting here on the throttle, as well as the mode selector switch where you can choose between 3 separate profiles. So, just a quick glance at what's at the bottom there, as well as the toggle switches. Alright, onto a look at the throttle in Elite Dangerous. One thing I was really impressed with was how easily and how smoothly the throttle actually moved. I did have the tension turned down quite a bit, so there wasn't that much resistance. I found with extremely high resistance that the throttle would have a tendency to kind of slip on my desk. It does have good rubber boots on the bottom, which give it good traction, but if you turn the tension all the way up, it gets really difficult to push that throttle forward, and it is going to end up moving. So without actually securing it down, you're going to have to keep the tension down pretty low. Overall, I feel that the throttle is actually really solid. It actually probably exceeds what I need it to do, but it'll definitely be a piece that's going to grow with me as I get more involved in some of the more advanced flight simulators. So we'll give it about another 30 seconds or so of gameplay, and then we'll do a quick recap. Alright, so a real quick recap of this before we end the video. Some of the positive things that you can get from this system is it comes with a load of features. You've got 3 separate profiles that you can set up. You can set them up for different aircraft, you can set them up for different games, different styles of play, whatever you need it to do. There are more than enough buttons to be, even somewhat advanced in some of these flight simulators without having to go out and buy tons of other accessories. Another good thing is the adjustable tension, not only on the joystick by replacing the springs, but also with the tension on the throttle by adjusting the knob on the side. Now, some of the cons that come with this are the fact that it's all plastic. However, I really don't consider it a con at this price point. If you compare it to some of the other joysticks that are on the market that are completely metal, you're going to look at spending $200, maybe even $300 more. Now, probably the biggest con of them all is going to be the amount of tension that it takes to break the joystick free from center. While it does get a little bit better with the lower resistance springs, it does seem like it's somewhat of a problem, more so with the roll than the pitch. This isn't really a deal breaker for me, but it most likely could be something that could be easily resolved with maybe a little bit of grease. The only other thing I could probably nitpick on this system is that on the throttle, the hat switches, they're a little bit loose. If you touch them even slightly with your fingers, you may have a tendency to activate them, which, if you, depending on what you have them configured for, could really impact your game. But that's something that could probably be easily overcome just by getting used to the controls. Overall, this is, my opinion, probably one of the best hands-on throttle and sticks that you can get for your money. You've got dual throttles on there. You can control multiple engines. It's got a ton of features. There's not much more that you could really add to this without making it much larger. So for the money, it's great. I would definitely recommend it. If you're kind of hung up by some of the cons that I said, then maybe you want to spring an extra $200-300 and go buy one of those full metal joysticks around the market. But you're going to be hard pressed to find a better joystick for the money. The one thing I didn't review in this was the software, but I can tell you it's a huge step up from what Saitek used to offer as far as configuration of software goes, and it's been customized specifically for the X-55. So not too much to go on there, but definitely not a holdup in my opinion. So that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed the review. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up, comment, subscribe. Make sure to check out some of my other videos, and I'll see you next time.